Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Tim Silk. I'm a professor in marketing. I've been at Sauder for 16 years. I started my career as a brand manager. I grew up in auto racing, and I've basically worked with organizations around the world to help them identify market opportunities and bring them to market. And so, very similar backgrounds to a lot of our faculty, but everyone's got their own niches. So I'm just here to kind of give you a flavor of what the PSM track's about, and mostly leaving time for questions at the end. So I've just got a few slides here. So if you're kind of wondering what product management is, it's essentially, as well as services. This is a hybrid between marketing and operations, and you need to understand both sides. So recognize that when we built the tracks, there was massive levels of consultation with industry, right? We've got employers that regularly hire from us. We have alumni all over the world in these industries. So this was not an academic exercise. We started by practicing what we preach, and that is go to the market and understand what their needs are. We asked employers, when you're hiring, whether it be from us or from other institutions, where are the knowledge gaps? How can universities do a better job? How can MBA programs do a better job of giving the training and the skills that you need? And much of it is also attitude, not just skill set. And so for anyone who's touched these roles will tell you, you have to be a very multidisciplinary manager. You've got to understand the market opportunity side, but you also have to really understand the operational back end, because these things ebb and flow and they have big, big consequences with each other. In fact, a lot of things that marketers do makes operations managers' job a tough time and vice versa. So we're trying to teach you an integrated skill set. And so product management and service management, and we are just as focused on the services side as product. So to be clear, product I think gets more attention than services, but if you have an interest in working in the services industry, this would be a good track that might be a good fit for you. But we're going to teach you the front end in terms of how you interface with the market, as well as the back end in terms of how you're operating with the supply chain. And of course, because you're taking many electives, you can round those skills out with other things. But the difficult thing about a product manager or a brand manager role is you are liaisoning with so many different groups and functions. And so it's really about coordination skills more than anything. And you don't have to be a technical expert by any means, okay? So to give you a bit of a sense here, on the operations side, optimization problems are very important. For those of you that come from an engineering background or systems design background, understand, optimization problems are critical. And so that's what operations is really doing, is given that we have a certain level of demand within a certain range, how do we set up our operations so that we can take advantage of being smooth, minimizing our costs, but still delivering quality output. And as you can see in the COVID pandemic, supply chains are being massively disrupted. And this is a big driver of the inflation you're seeing right now. I mean, we're the highest inflation in 40 years. US just hit over a 40-year benchmark. And this is because of supply chain disruption. Things were optimized to a certain amount of variability. That's been thrown out of whack. So as you'll learn in operations, variability is the enemy. And it's very hard to account for a wide range in that. And so I would argue that knowing, right, we should have, we're able to predict that, okay, we're a very global economy. We're going to have a lot of disruption in terms of the flow of goods and services because of COVID. And the smart operations managers knew, okay, I got to do everything I can in the short run to maximize my variability, which means I'm not going to be optimized, but I need to be flexible, okay? But anyway, you guys will learn all those types of things in the program. And then on the market side, right, is how to identify market opportunity and identifying the market opportunity that's behind the blind spots that the other competitors don't see. And so this isn't around being clever and brainstorming. This is about teaching you best practice techniques that are not heavily used in industry. And by using them, you'll be able to identify market opportunity that is revealed by the techniques you're using, even though they're not common practice. So a big kind of theme in the MBA that you'll learn is that best practice does not equate common practice. What the leading organizations are doing across industries and across different markets is not the status quo. Most organizations either are not aware of these best practices because their people aren't trained from those areas, or worse off, they know them but they don't implement them. Okay, and I think what you'll find is that this stuff isn't rocket science. It's not that difficult to comprehend. It's just that it's very counterintuitive to what a person who didn't have the training would do. And so that's what we're trying to do in the PSM program. So if you think about, and it's not just focused on product management, but what we're trying to do is give you an integrated skill set so that you understand how all the different silos fit together and interact, so that you're making decisions from a big picture view, a multidisciplinary view, and basically are just less naive about how the left hand affects what the right hand is doing. Okay, so we're going to combine that deep understanding, which largely is coming from an integration of marketing and operations management, which traditionally are taught siloed. And what we're doing in our program is we're bringing those together in a very comprehensive and a very coherent curriculum. And so you're going to learn how to develop, introduce, and sustain products. So you think about the product life cycle as well as product development. We're going to teach you those best practices on how to do that. And you might come from a technical background, you may not, but we'll teach you. All right. And so the track provides you with an integrated skill set. And so you have this hybrid training. Now, if you wanted to focus in marketing or you wanted to focus in operations, you can still do that. It's just a matter of how you do your course selection. So there's a lot of degree of freedom. But I think what Paul and DJ and myself and Glenn are trying to get across is arguably the track you choose here, you'll figure that out in the end. We're trying to just communicate to you that we have an MBA curriculum that is very focused on this integrated skill set. And that's what we're arguing is a bit of a differentiating factor. There's a lot of good schools that you have to choose from, a lot of excellent faculty members, but this curriculum is really cross-functional, cross-disciplinary, and that traditionally hasn't been done well in management education. So it's more about that we're trying to show you, like, look, we have a curriculum that's very focused on these verticals. And so, you're going to figure out with your course selection down the road what you want to do. Okay, so you're probably thinking, so what do I do with this, right? Like, well, I would argue it's not what you do with it. It's like you should be choosing the track based upon the aspiration that you would have career-wise. So there's kind of three lenses through which you can see this. One would be, all right, if you wanted to specialize in operations, these are the types of positions that you would be going for. And while there are great opportunities in BC and Vancouver particularly, we're giving you a world-class education. We would like you to travel the world and not stay in Vancouver. I mean, a lot of people love to come here to train, which is great, and get their education, but we're not training you for the local market. While there's lots of opportunity here, we're training you so that you can go to Shanghai, London, Singapore, Paris, New York, LA, right? So we're trying to give you great mobility. If you wanted to focus on the marketing side, you certainly could do that and go after traditional marketing jobs. But you could also go after hybrid positions, which traditionally are not trained well in school. Okay. So the idea here is if you have an interest in these, and a lot of the students that come to our school are like, I know that I don't want to do what I was doing before. I haven't necessarily figured out and charted my path going forward. We get that. You're pivoting. And that's why you're going to do 2 periods of foundational coursework before you choose your tracks. But if you have an interest in these areas, then there's potentially a fit. And I think each of us as track champions, we're actually not advocating for any of our tracks. We're just trying to be very transparent in terms of, if you're interested in these careers, this is the curriculum that's been built to train you for it. But we're not trying to encourage or persuade or sell you on any of these tracks. It's just, we just want to make it transparent in terms of, this is the curriculum that you have available. Okay. So if you're looking at where the students are placing, this is just a really small sampling. It's representative, but it's only kind of scratching the surface of where our students go. And so obviously Vancouver's punching above its weight in terms of, when I moved here 16 years ago, I considered it the biggest small town in Canada, and it still is kind of, but we've got a lot more activity here in terms of, we've always had small and medium tech, but a lot more global brands are here. Why? Because look at our labor pool. Our labor market's incredible. We got people from all over the world that want to come to Vancouver to get their education, and they're very mobile. And so it's a great place to have access to these opportunities. So this is not obviously everything. It's just it's a piece. But the fact is, we know what the employers are looking for. We have great relationships with them. They've been very, very forthcoming in terms of what they wanted to see in a curriculum, and we try to be very responsive to that. So in terms of specific coursework, I'll do this very quickly because this is probably less interesting to you because you don't necessarily know the courses. But essentially, we're going to give you a foundation in marketing and operations, and then you have a ton of electives to choose from. These are just some examples. And because you're going to have access to this recording and access to this deck, I don't want to bore you, but we have a very strong set of courses here, and it's really a buffet that you can choose from. And as I'm sure DJ and Paul have mentioned to you, you might be taking courses from other tracks. A lot of these courses are actually cross-listed. So, I mean, DJ and I built the tech product management course together. That's cross-listed in both our tracks. I teach the product development, which is popular for both the entrepreneurship track as well as the TAL track as well as PSM. So we're just trying to give you access to good curriculum. So in terms of who went where, this is a small smattering, and then we'll open up to questions. But I want to show here that our students are coming from all over the world. Shweta came from India. Alex came from the United States. These students are pivoting. So you obviously don't have time to read their whole background, but the whole point of the MBA program is it's meant to be a transformative experience. And based upon the questions when I heard you asking DJ, which were all great questions, I understand your concerns. We're here to train you so that you can pivot your career. You don't need to be an expert in the industry that you're moving into, because the firms know this, right? They're like, look, I want a smart individual who's got rigorous foundational training and is smart and hardworking. And we're going to give you that rigorous foundation in terms of training. It is not the education's job to make you an expert in whatever vertical field or subfield you want to go into. We're here to teach you how to be critical thinkers, how to analyze information, how to break problems down. An MBA is a degree to learn how to become a problem solver. Okay, and like in medicine, if the doctor misdiagnoses the patient, the doctor's interventions to bring that patient back to health are going to fail. So we're just here to help you to do problem diagnosis. Okay. And so we don't want to get too narrow and talk about, just like I heard one of the questions like, what are you guys focused on software? We are not focused on any verticals. But if you look at what product managers do, whether they are in software industry, physical goods, or brand management with consumer packaged goods, these fields are very different. But the job role of that product manager is very similar across that board. And that's the skill set that we're training for. Okay. Hannah and Mark went in a marketing focused direction. Hannah is very much into wellness, and she didn't want to work for a traditional packaged goods company that she felt wasn't aligned with her values. And so she went and worked for an organization that's really about health and wellness and the role of food. And we see a lot of our students, obviously, your value systems are guiding your career. Mark was very interested in event promotions, and so TTT Studios was a spin-off firm from the Olympics when they were here in Vancouver, with a lot of event and promotional marketing. We got students that are more operations focused, like you see Ravina and Yash here. He got a great job at Amazon doing robotics work. Kareem and Nair were very much wanting to work in a tech environment. Camille and Maxim were more focused on operations. And so this is just a smattering. Christian, he came from Switzerland. He's traveled, he's moved over to Italy. Juliana is with TELUS in telecommunications. So, I mean, there's every one of these students, like each of you, have their story, right? Vaughn works for Anheuser-Busch in the beer business. Maria started their own firm, then went back into product marketing. So every one of these students went in a different direction than when they came in, and that's the point here. So I'll leave it at that. We'll go to questions, and if you see me looking over to the side here, it's just because I'm reading off of the Q&A. So we'll fire away here. Does this track fit well with roles and strategy? Yes. So everyone's going to learn strategy, regardless of what track you do. Strategy is a central part of the curriculum, um, and everyone will have that foundation. Um, Tail shouldn't wag the dog. Product strategy should not drive corporate strategy. The corporate strategy should be driving the product strategy. But all of this starts with where are the opportunities in the market. So there are a lot of people that were in the PSM track that went into strategic roles, as you see with these two here. I mean, go into consulting. We used to have a separate track for consulting and strategy, and we got rid of it simply because we felt that that needs to be foundational for everyone. So regardless of what track you take, you're going to be well trained in strategy. So Rodrigo, hopefully that answers your question. For those who've already worked as product manager before, what would be the main elements in the course that can help them become better? I would argue that you probably are a product of the industry that you worked in, and that there are certain norms that you experienced, but you may not have actually been exposed to best practices that are more broad-based, more generalizable, that would transcend the specific industry you came from. So I'd probably need to know more about in terms of what background you came from. But let me go this way. I mean, I was a brand manager for several years, and then I went off and did my PhD and became a professor. And the stuff that I teach is stuff that I did not know when I was a brand manager. So um, it's an empirical question whether or not you've actually been exposed to the best practices. And given that you're probably responsible for running the business day to day, my guess is that you probably didn't have a lot of time to learn outside of the job. So my guess is that while you got great experience and know quite a lot, there's probably a lot of best practices that you haven't been exposed to. For anthropology methods, have you done narrative exploratory interviews, right, which is very different from traditional customer input? Have you learned how to do observation, best practice observations? Most of these organizations aren't doing that because this stuff came from anthropology. So we're teaching you social science with a focus on the business markets that you would be interested in working in. So hopefully that helps. Are there specific courses on sales? We have a business development course. It's a great course. And we do not teach you personal selling. So it's not about becoming a salesperson, but we do have a course on sales strategy. So for instance, how do you structure sales forces? Should you use a key account structure? Should you use a geographic structure? How do you compensate salespeople? The norm, right, in the real world is to base compensation based upon commissions on revenue. That is not a best practice, because as we'll teach you, what drives revenue is not the same thing that's driving profitability. And you should be basing the commissions based upon margin targets and profitability, not revenue. But in terms of business development, anyone who's going to work in, say, in technology leadership, DJ would tell you, like, everyone's a salesperson at the end of the day. You're always basically trying to communicate your idea. But yes, we have a specific course in the MBA program on business development, and it's a very good course. What are the key differences between product management and services management? Great question. Okay. Services are intangible, which means it's very difficult for human beings to evaluate quality prior to purchase. We make this distinction between what we call search goods and experience goods. Search goods are things that you can evaluate prior to making a purchase decision, but things like education, restaurants, hotels, travel, right? All these things, as much as you were trying to evaluate it, you really don't know what you're going to get until you're in the experience. And so that intangibility has a big impact on how people evaluate quality. So things like price and brand become much more strong cues. In addition to that, there's 3 other key dimensions on how service is different from products. And we have a specific course in services management in this area that I do a lot of work in. So there's big differences between those markets in terms of the human behavior and how people evaluate experiences. Now, the management skill set, I would argue, is not different in terms of how you coordinate, but understanding how people are going to evaluate the consumption experience will have a big impact, and we address that in the curriculum. Hopefully that helps. How does the curriculum stay up to date on best and current practices? Because we're the leaders in the field and we're experts at what we, not to sound like an ass, but we're at the forefront of everything. That's our job. We're experts. You guys know in your jobs, you're super busy. You're responsible for running the business. You don't have time I mean, what I do is I read everything. I'm essentially your filter. You're paying a shitload of money so that the experts in the world can read everything, and then we'll present to you out of all the stuff that's out there, this is the stuff that matters. So that's a very crass way, I guess, of me putting it down in terms of like the role that in some ways faculty play. So, there's markets that move very fast, right? There was a question earlier about, are we members of the blockchain institute? I don't know. We are members of a lot of organizations. I have to check on that. But this is why you have universities. This is why you have people that all they do for a living is focus on their field, so that we can disseminate that knowledge. So hopefully that's clear. That's why we have universities. That's why we have experts. Does product and service management track offer electives on digital marketing and marketing analytics? Yep, we do. Those are available to you, and you don't have to be in the track to take them. Anybody can take those electives. So yeah, we have a digital marketing course, and we have a separate course on analytics and on data visualization. How do you make sure you're an expert when you're not in the industry? Because I work with companies every day. I should give you maybe a slide of my background. So right now I'm working with Visa, I'm working with the World Bank, the Federal Trade Commission, the Canadian Dental Association, let's see who else, Best Buy. I mean, the companies reach out to us because we are the experts, and they present their problems and tell us, you do this for a living, how can we help? So I'll never know their business inside and out like they do, that's their business. But if you ask me, like my expertise is as a behavioralist. I'm a behavioral economist, psychologist, anthropologist, sociologist. So I study human behavior for a living. And if a company has questions about market behavior and consumer behavior or B2B, business to business behavior, I'm someone that can tell them how human beings behave. And once I understand their context, I can give them some advice on how to address the problem. Did that answer your question? Trying to be direct. You're welcome, Caroline. You have good questions, Caroline. All right. Does product and service, and I'm mindful of time. We're good for time. We got 6 minutes. Tina, you just jump in.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Okay.
Yeah, good.
How does the curriculum stay? Okay, we did that one. Does product and services management track Octo? We did that one. Okay, so I can just like answer. What is the main difference between tech and data analytics, leadership, career track, and product services management? The main difference is that is DG still here? Yes. The required course in the front end. I mean, each track has, I think, 3 or 4 required courses, and then everything is electives. So, Tina, can you show me what the requireds are on the tech analytics? The TAL track?
The TAL track, sure. Give me 1 second.
If I'll stop sharing and you can share that, because you have his deck. I don't have his deck.
Yep, I do.
And then I'll reference that to the required courses here.
Sounds good. Just give me 1 second.
I'll keep sharing mine for a minute. Okay, so I'll answer the first part. So these are the required courses in PSM. They are operations and marketing foundations. Okay, so process fundamentals is looking at like the production process. And marketing communications is how would you communicate with your market, and supply chain management is looking at the back end supply chain. But even if you're in the services industry, you're going to have supply chain issues. So these 3 required courses are not required if you take the other tracks. And the reason why these 3 are required is because industry tells us if you're going to train people in product and services management, this is the bare minimum that we definitely want there as an integrated skill set. Beyond that, you can let the students choose what they want. Okay, so because the electives are available to anyone, this is really the only thing that makes PSM is that you're going to have these 3 as required. Okay, if you took TAL, you would have those as requireds. You could take PSM or Paul's track, or you could take any track and still take data visualization as an elective, but it is required if you're going to do TAL. Technology product management is the course that DJ and I co-developed. A lot of PSM students will take that. And then, so business development, right? I mean, a lot of people would not take that course. The reason why it's required in DJ's track is anyone that works in tech will tell you, you're always selling, you're always pitching, right? And so that's a must. And so the issue here, for everyone knows, is like the big reason we have tracks, I can give you the backstory, having been here so long. When students choose their courses without tracks, they're obviously going to take the classes that are interesting to them, which is great. But what they may not know is, what is industry expect me to know? And so the idea of the tracks was essentially just to reduce risk. And that was, all right, if you're going to go in this direction, this is stuff that you have to have. So someone may not take a business development course because they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I want that. And DJ saying, if you're going to go in this path, like, you got to know that. And someone may be like, I don't know if I want to take process fundamentals. I don't know if I'm interested in that. And if you're going to work as a product manager, it's like, you need to know that. So we're basically there to ensure that you're going to have a foundation that is expected depending on the different directions you go. But we're also trying to, importantly, give you as many degrees of freedom as we can in terms of how you would specialize your coursework. So does that hopefully answer your questions about the differences between the tracks? Can you please share one of the problems that the companies that come to share and possibly looking for solutions? Oh gosh, sure. So with Visa, well, you guys know them as a credit card company, I do work on how payment formats and different forms of monetary currency influence purchase behavior. And so you might be familiar with gift cards, or as they say in the industry, prepaid cards. And people spend that differently than they would if it was physical paper money in their hand. This is not, to be clear, this is not about differences in currency, but this is different in what we call payment formats. And Visa, getting into the prepaid card business, was very interested in this type of behavior. And I'd run a bunch of experiments that manipulated the payment format in different types of purchase domains. And we found that people actually spend much more freely and are not as careful with their what we call mental accounting or their mental budgeting when they spend in formats. And there's something called the pain of paying. And so when you actually see the dollar bills leave your hand, you're very affected by that viscerally, which means that you are very sensitive to things like opportunity cost of your spending and tend to be a little bit more frugal. And so when you look at big policy issues around the world, for instance, in the United States, a lot of mothers get transfer payments from the government, like a baby bonus, as a prepaid card as opposed to money in the bank account. When companies issue things like refunds, they might give you store credit or money on a prepaid card. And if you're spending that money differently, it has big public policy implications. But that's an example where, I study that for a living. Someone that works for Visa is not going to be necessarily a behavioral expert in payment formats. And that's again, why you have universities. That's why we're here. Hopefully that helps.
And we're 6:30 now.
Okay, let's call it there. Anyway, thank you everyone for your time. I don't know what the process is for other questions that you can give to Tina, but I'm happy to follow up with anyone. But most importantly, good luck making your decision on which institution you choose to go. Thank you for considering us, and hopefully this information was helpful. So thank you very much.